I wish that I could tell you that your preferred learning style would always match up with your professor's teaching styles, but that's not the case. But have no worries. There are some things that we can do to try to marry the two together. In many cases, we've learned information through what we see, what we hear, and what we actually do in most cases. You can associate what you see learning that way by being a visual learner. If you prefer learning through what you hear, then you would be considered an auditory learner. And then lastly, which is where I find myself, is if you learn by doing, you're considered a kinesthetic or a tactile learner. Well, that's great, but what if it doesn't match up with the way that your professors teach? Now we have this gap. So today we want to spend just a few minutes talking about how can we close that gap and how can we bring the two together so that we can increase your chances of being successful this semester. So say for instance, you prefer learning by what you see. And in most cases, in our courses, we have our professors who are teaching lecture style. Now we may find ourselves being lectured to through online media, or we could be still in a classroom setting. Whatever the case may be, if your professor lectures but you prefer to learn by seeing, you may want to consider being able to take that lecture and convert it into charts and graphs and diagrams where you can have that content more readily accessible to you. Another thing that you might consider doing is creating like pictures or little squiggly pictures with arrows pointing to and from that will help to solidify whatever the concept is that you're trying to understand. If you happen to be an auditory learner and you like to learn by hearing, having a lecture may be perfect for you because you're hearing what the professor is saying. But what if the professor is not leaning heavily toward lecturing, but leaning heavily toward PowerPoints or using charts and graphs in your textbook? Well, one of the things that you might consider doing is converting that information into recorded messages. So for instance, you can take your notes and record them so that you can listen to them over and over again. You can actually take the PowerPoint information and you can create that into a recording so that you can better understand it and listen to it whenever you want to. The beauty in doing that too is that you're really refreshing yourself over the material as you record it so that you can better understand. Now the last one is kinesthetic learning. You see I have this in my hand because that is the category that I fall into, and I do better when I'm actually touching, seeing, smelling, hearing, and doing. One of the things I will tell you about this preferred learning style is you have to be careful that you don't dive in before fully understanding what it is you're supposed to do. So we gotta read instructions and read directions so that we know what we're doing. But if this may be your preferred learning style and you're in a classroom setting with your professor, you may actually want to take that lecture and be able to convert it into, say, maybe steps. Maybe there's information that you can organize in a way that you can associate it with numbers, where you're physically using your hands to say, okay, this is the first part of this process, this is the second part, or be able to take a theory and break it down into pieces so that you can associate it with a letter A, B, C, or D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that way, it will give you the movement that you need so that you can really retain the information. So those are the 3 learning styles. 1 would be if you like to see, that's visual. 2, if you like to learn by hearing, auditory. And 3, if you like to learn by doing, then that's kinesthetic or tactile. So if you're not quite sure what your preferred learning style is, we're going to include a very, very brief assessment on how you prefer to learn so that you can take it and have a better understanding maybe of what your preferred style is. Now, the last thing I want to leave you with is to let you know that you can always go to your professor to discuss with him or her about what your preferred learning style is. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to adjust their teaching style to the way you want to learn, but they're going to be open to hearing what you have to say and may be able to recommend some resources that you can use to better help you along your path to learning. So thank you for listening today. Be encouraged, be empowered, certainly by knowing the way that you prefer to learn.